All right, we're going to do a negative shapes drawing here. I'm going to start with my fine charcoal gesturing, and I'm going to spend a few minutes doing that until it feels decent to me. The thing to remember about the gesture is it's giving you the feel of the pose, but it's not necessarily giving you exactly where everything is. So when we jump into the negative shapes, you're almost certainly going to need to move some things. I'm certainly going to need to move some things. It's where I'm going to start measuring and being more particular about the shapes. To start with, though, I'm just going to gesture as usual for this particular pose. There's like an arc up top. There's some boxy shape here. The leg, it's like just after the feel here. That's about what it feels like to me. There's kind of this arcing top part, and then everything shoots down from there. This back leg has a little more flow to it. And I think I'm going to include this box as well as part of the figure so that my negative shapes are made up of figure and box. Okay, so within a couple of minutes here, I've got a feel for what my pose is. It seems to be fitting on the page decently. I've got some space up above. Um, Gesture wise, I feel pretty okay with it. The next thing that I want to do is establish my envelope for this pose. The top is going to be kind of weird. Like, where do I start my envelope along the top? I think what I might do along the top is just do a straight line like this so that I can have a triangular negative shape over here and a triangular one over here. It doesn't really matter what these are. Sort of anything that's not part of the figure. Your negative shapes outside of the figure, sort of representing the space that goes off this way and that way, can kind of have any shape. So it makes sense to use the envelope in some poses. In this one, I'm going to run it horizontal first, and then I can make decent uh, decisions about what the rest of my envelope should be like. So for this, in this case, off the back end here down to the heel, I can check that angle on my reference and just make sure my angle is more or less lining up here, like that. So you can see how I'm going to have a little triangle here and then a longer shape here with a straight edge. That's sort of the plan for this pose. And it goes in like that and maybe carries onto the box like that. All right, well, I think I'll do this side as well. So let's see. Basically saying that's sort of what the hair is doing. If I go, I'm starting to measure now for my envelope. If I come back off the top of the head here and just run a horizontal, in the drawing, I have that generally right where that contact point is, the farthest left part of the rear. It's close. It's a little, maybe just a little bit lower. I'll favor the low part there. I'm going to go ahead and throw this. If I go tip of the hair towards the hands, I notice that it angles back in like this. So I'm going to make sure and get that. Hand should be somewhere here. That's roughly where I've got it in the gesture as well. This is still very loose. I'm not settled on anything technically yet. We'll just go up with that there. And then and a straight down so my box can be a little bit smaller. Give these hands room to kind of hang over. And then I'll just let it take up the rest of that envelope will be just this box. So there's my gesture inside of envelope. And I haven't really made any corrections yet. I've just kind of gone from the hip, particularly with the gesture, getting the feel of the pose, then laying in this envelope in a way that seems reasonable. I'm ready to go in and start being more specific. So now I ghosted it. I've got room to go in with my pencil. I have a soft charcoal pencil here and a medium charcoal pencil that is small. So if you start running out of charcoal pencil, it's nice to have these extenders because you can just pop it in the end there, tighten it up, and you've got essentially a full pencil again. So these ones are a bit pricier than they should be, I think, but I use them all the time, so they're worth having. All right, I'm going to do a couple of measurements because I can measure the width here. So like from rear straight across to sort of empty space, or maybe down to the hair, and compare it to the height. When I do that on the model, I get rear to hair goes once and a third. So if I take this measurement and turn it vertical, I'm going to have to step back because my measuring stick is not long enough. I don't have a long one. I'm just going to step back and do it from back here. If I take that measurement, it goes once and about a half. So what I just learned about mine is that when I take this measurement and turn it up, instead of like the once and a third that I measured, mine is like once and a half. It tells me it's stretched out this way. I'm kind of stretching things vertically. So I have to decide, like, is that something I need to fix? And if so, what? I'm not going to start measuring body parts here, really. I'm just sort of getting the overall situation figured out. So I think I'm just going to lift this bottom information up just a little bit. So it's like this, that. So that's my new envelope that I've just moved up a little bit. Right? And then I can ghost that and just remember that this is what I'm staying with. I can remeasure, which I think I will do just to make sure that I'm on the right track. Boom, and it goes once and a third. So that's closer. Still not dead on, but in these drawings, well, dead on, as close to dead on as you can get it is good, but that feels a little bit better to me as my envelope. So now all of my negative shapes need to exist inside of this box, inside of this envelope, rather. All right, now I need to decide which of these negative shapes is the best/easiest one to start with. I tend to gravitate towards middle ones, like ones in the center, because then I can I don't have to start in one area and have it end up growing a particular direction. If I start here at a particular size, if it's going to grow, it's going to grow equally, I guess. If it's going to shrink, it's going to shrink equally. So I've got my gesture here. I think the shape that I'm going to go with is this triangular one that's between the arm and the leg that's up on the box. I could do the other one, but it kind of goes down to the side of the box and stuff. I think I'm going to start with this one, and it's a little more complicated, but I think we can get there. So, all right. What this looks like to me is a really tall triangle, right? It's got some nature to it, like some details, but for the most part, it's just a tall triangle. So I'm going to start with that, and I'm just going to put it roughly where it feels like it ought to be. And I'm using my, excuse my medium charcoal pencil for this. And we'll go up like that. So that's roughly the triangle that I see minus its wavy sides. And I can check and see like, uh, well, this triangle seems to fit across once, twice, plus a little bit left over. Is that what I see in the model? So I'm going to check. There's one, and it goes once, twice, almost exactly. So this could be just a little bit taller, I think. Check this again. Once, and it goes once, twice. I'm just a little overshot. So I measured the height of this against the whole width of my envelope here, contact point to contact point. When I do that here, let me just double check once. It goes once, twice ish. It's in the neighborhood of twice. Once, twice. All right. So I'm pretty decent. I feel pretty decent about the height of this one. I can check the width of the bottom overall. It's a little dicier here because it's one width goes once, twice, three, four exactly into the height of the triangle. If I check up on the model, it goes one width. The bottom goes once, twice, three, roughly four. I'm feeling better and better about this triangle. All right. So now I feel decent about maybe making this triangle more specific because I know it's roughly in the right spot. I know it's roughly the right height. I know it's roughly the right width relative to its own height. I'm getting more information about this triangle. I'm feeling better about it as we go. One thing I do want to figure out is maybe like, is it placed in a decent spot? So once, twice to the edge. So one, once, twice to the edge. I'm a little bit this way with it, but I think it's okay. If my envelope needs to grow, so be it. All right, so now I can start making this thing specific, which it's like that this edge should have a little more tilt to it. And I know that the bottom can be flat, so I feel comfortable with that. That shape on the bottom left leans in like that. Then it breaks and leans out like this. And that's just about one width. So if I take this and just turn it up, that's about where my angle break is. So I feel decent about that. Then there's kind of a long section that goes back this way. Out and up. This part juts out like that. So there's like a little angle in. Not sure how well you can see that from the camera, but instead of following this, there's a little short section that tucks in a little more. Then it goes straight. Then it goes out again. Then it's super tempting to just make a big old curve right here because the right side of this negative shape looks like a big S curve. But I'm gonna resist that temptation and try to make it a little more specific than that. So straight up to there. If it had to change, it would change about there. Then it dives back in towards this point. But about partway up, there's a little tick like that. Goes up, there's another little tick, then a shelf, Kind of like that. There's just a little bit of irregularity right there on the shape. And then up above that, there's just a little tiny triangle to make sort of the top of my triangle there. So that's two negative shapes. And I feel pretty decent about these ones. So I'm going to use this and go over and deal with this one because that's this. I was thinking about doing that one first, decided to do this one first. Now I'm going to go to that one. Where does this one start? Well, I'm going to come down here where I see like a pointy spot of it and compare, like if I take this and just move it over, does it start here? Does it start half that? Does it start, where exactly does this next negative shape start? If I measure on my model, it goes, it's about half of this. So if I go roughly half there, mark it, that's about where the next shape starts. Tick there. And my gesture kind of lines up there, so I feel reasonable about it. It shifts like this. So it's just a pickup from this horizontal. These horizontals happen at the same time. If I think about the positive shape for a minute, it's that back of the box. Of course, it's going to be in line. If I look at the negative shapes only, this bottom shelf of this negative shape lines up with the bottom shelf of that one. All right, and I'm going to go from this point to, there's a point up here that I need to find. Right, this shape comes up, does like a hook thing, and then comes to a point somewhere up here. And I'm going to find that point before I start drawing the shape because I think I can relate it to this shape I've already drawn. And that's that it goes, it's slightly down from this shape. So it's somewhere along a line like that is where my point is going to be. And then it's like, how far is it? If I take that distance and compare it like this, like how does the distance from this point to wherever this other point is compare to the distance here? Right? If I look at my model, it's slightly, oh, it's almost dead on. It's just ever so slightly bigger than this. So that tells me there maybe. I took this, when I looked at the model, I took this, and when I lined it up with this other negative shape's point, it left just a little bit of leftover before this point. So boom, boom, maybe just a little further out. Boom. Yeah, that's better. Just a little bit left over. And it's slightly lower than that point. Not by a ton, but slightly. All right. Now I feel reasonable about that. If I've been careful, when I measure this point to that point on my drawing, it's almost perfectly vertical. It's tilting back just a little bit from vertical. If I look at my model, do I get the same thing? Yeah, I feel decent about that. So that feels like a good orientation here. All right, what about the next point? I think I'm gonna skip all of the curves and the S's and stuff, and I'm just gonna go like point, point. There's a point here, and that'll at least get this area dealt with, and then I'll maybe carry on. I need to find this point wherever that angle change occurs as well, and I can just check the width of that. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now. How does this line compare to that opening? It is a little bit bigger. It's like that. So I'm feeling pretty good about where that's at. All right. Next point is slightly lower. So it's, again, in fact, is it in line with the previous one? I mumbled to myself during these demos a lot, by the way. I think that if I go a line from here through that point and just carry it on, hey, get out of there, cat. If I just carry it on, it will lead me to this other point. Do all three of those line up? They kind of do. So boom, 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 there. I like to just throw this line in just to be like the point is somewhere along that kind of line. And that was vine charcoal, so it'll get out of the way. All right, so now I just need a distance from here to where. So I'm just going to take the measurement I see on my model here and just go hunting, like what else is that size. If I take that measurement and go, ooh, that's pretty good. All right, the distance from this point to this point, like that, is the same as this. So here's where my original idea is way too far this way, according to my measurements right now, because when I measure from this point to that point, it was the same as the distance from this point to the other on that negative shape. Just double check again. Maybe a little longer. Maybe like that. Just tease it just a tad longer. All right, so I've got 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna add some character to these now as well. And this one, straight off the bat, it starts angling backwards. This is a real gentle curve as well. It's super tempting to make it curvy. What I want to find out is where this little jut is. If I'm looking at the negative shape, again, it's real tempting to be like, leg, what's the leg? If I get hung up on the leg, I'm going to start trying to draw a leg, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm drawing this empty space. So I need to look at it like that. It looks like this shape is funny. It looks like, if you look at the blue of this shape, I don't know if you, the Star Wars with those ambassadors, is it episode 1? I can't remember. They have those weird hats that scoop up. This looks like a little frog guy with a hat, with a weird hat on. That's what I'm going to tell myself to keep myself from trying to draw a leg. Where does the, I don't know what the mouth of this thing hit? I can measure that. I can go from this point to wherever that is. How does that compare to this maybe? Or how many times does it go up maybe? So it feels not quite. It's larger than this line. It's like that when I measure it. So that gives me roughly where the the furthest point this way is. I think I've gone a little too far this way with this information, because if I look on my drawing, see how it leans, like from this point to this point, leans to the left a little bit. If I look on the model, it's almost dead vertical. So this, so I take a little bit of that bulge out of it. It's closer. This is a reasonable excuse for the eraser. I'm just gonna play down that mistake, I'm calling it. favor of this new info. This is an S curve to here, but what kind? It goes straight for a second, then it straightens again and reaches its lowest point there. So that's roughly what that one feels like. It's not any old S curve. It's like a tight bit here, a longer bit, and then a short bit there. There's a little angle change in here that I'm going to try and get, and it is like that from the widest spot, so it's like there. I'm drawing lightly on this one. I don't want to firm these up too soon. This is incorrect. If I look at the tightest spot here, it's above this, which means that's not right. This is what I mean when I talk about holding yourself accountable to the shapes. It would have been easy to just be like, yeah, it's good enough, right? I'm not going to go around changing all kinds of stuff. And that's no good. Is that a little bit? It is just about the same as this little bit. So it doesn't go any farther than that before it drops straight down. Now somewhere down here, there's a connection, like this bottom half of this shape. Like how tall is it from, I don't know, like from here to the bottom of the shape? How does that compare? Is it exactly halfway of this big shape? I don't know. I'm going to find that out real quick. If I just go straight down from that, it's below. So if I just go straight down from this, that's below where this shape carries on. So this is telling me that this stuff is going to be moving even further upwards, I think. Let's go. check the width here because it seems starting to seem a little bit narrow to me. Same as that. Yeah, so this. Closer. All right. Call that shape. It's going to be a shape like that. And I'm just using my envelope here. It looks like this one that I changed to is closer. It's still not perfect. I'm measuring these shapes being in just a little bit, but it's close. This point is pretty good. Next one goes from that point all the way up. Angle's still pretty good from there, so feeling pretty good about that. If I take the waviness out of these, it's kind of like just a big triangle. Like that. That I need to add some character to. First, I need to know if that point is in the right spot. Straight across from this. A little low, but not too bad overall. All right, I've got one side of this shape. It's just going to be a straight line from this point up. And I just need to dress up this a little bit more. How wide is that going to be? Same as this. So boom, boom, hold on. A little bit wider. That's perfectly vertical. Distance between these two shapes is a little bit wide. And I could tell the silhouette starting up is beginning to make this feel a little bit, make this, what is empty space that represents the silhouette of the leg, feels a little bit weirdly wide. So I can either move this shape in, or I can reshape this one, which is what I think I will do because I think I got the angle a little bit off here. This goes straighter for longer. Close this one off. Presumably these ones should be relatively simple. I do want to check like the distance here. So from the top of this negative shape to my envelope, how does that compare to, can I find something that's the same as that? If I take that measurement, what else is like that? Hunting. That distance. So there to there should be about the same. So it looks like I either have this crunched a little bit, which could be true, or this stretched a little bit, which also could be true. I'm going to go hunting again. Same as this as well. So that's a second one that told me I was stretched a little bit. So I'm going to bring this down just a tad because I don't want it to be too stretched out. So it was up here, I'm moving it down roughly there. All right, the highest point is directly up and in from the, oops, that's too high. Directly up and in from this dip, sort of at an angle like that. Again, my envelope here is kind of arbitrary. I went straight out with it so that I could get this triangle. There we go. Angles down, and it's, so the height of this, if I go off of that, takes me straight to my angle change there. So I actually feel rather good about that. That was an overshot by a long margin. Somewhere in the middle of that shape. Right about there is where it comes back in. Okay, that's feeling pretty good. I'm just going to carry that negative shape over. Let's see, that one comes like that. This hair is kind of floofy. I'm just going to pretend it's not hair. I'm just trying to make the shape. If I wanted to come back in and add little negative shapes to hint that the hair goes on, it might be worth doing, but for now, I'm just going to leave it a blocked in shape. tiny negative shape here I'm going to get. Just to give us some sense. Okay, I think I'm going to call it there on this one. So you get a sense of this pose, but we didn't, at no point in this drawing did we draw the full contours of anything, right? The arms they didn't even show up. The leg just barely showed up as a result of these two negative shapes. There's a little bit of gesture curve going on in here, but nothing super descriptive. It's just an exploration of these individual shapes and how to arrive at the figure by looking at this empty space. The better you are at negotiating this empty space, the more efficiently you'll be able to look at the figure and see inaccuracies. Again, hardly ever are you going to draw this figure entirely like this. It feels kind of like flying blind. You have to trust your shapes. It's uncomfortable. The end result is just kind of a blocky silhouette and not really a figure. But it's training on holding yourself accountable to those negative shapes and making changes as necessary. So, all right, I'm going to call it there. Hopefully you found this demo helpful. That was negative shapes.